Before we begin this incredible story, please subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so you never miss another amazing tale like this one. It was a bright summer morning at Windsor Castle, and the royal grounds buzzed with quiet activity. Princess Charlotte, only 8 years old at the time, walked beside her nanny through the carefully manicured gardens. The young princess loved these morning walks. She would count the different types of flowers and watch the guards standing perfectly still at their posts. Charlotte always wondered how they managed to stay so straight and serious, especially on hot days like this one. The air was thick with warmth, and even the birds seemed to move slower than usual. Charlotte wore a light blue dress that her mother had picked out for her, and her hair was tied back with a matching ribbon. As they walked past the East Terrace, Charlotte noticed one of the Queen's guards standing at attention near the stone archway. He was tall and wore the traditional red uniform with the iconic bearskin hat. Charlotte had seen hundreds of guards before, but something about this particular guard caught her attention. She slowed her pace and watched him carefully. The guard's face looked pale, much paler than it should have been. Tiny beads of sweat rolled down his temples and his jaw was clenched tight. Charlotte's nanny continued walking, talking about the schedule for the afternoon, but Charlotte had stopped listening. She kept her eyes fixed on the guard, sensing that something was not right. The guard swayed slightly, almost imperceptibly, but Charlotte saw it. His knees seemed to buckle for just a moment before he locked them again. Charlotte had learned about the guards from her father. He had told her that they trained for months to stand perfectly still, no matter what happened around them. They were not supposed to move, talk, or show any emotion while on duty. It was their job, their duty to the crown, and they took it very seriously. But Charlotte knew the difference between duty and danger. This guard was not well. She could see it in the way his chest rose and fell too quickly, in the way his fingers trembled slightly against his rifle. The morning sun beat down mercilessly on the courtyard, and there was no shade where he stood. Charlotte remembered a day last summer when she had played outside too long and felt dizzy and sick. Her mother had explained that it was heat stroke and that she needed to drink water and rest in the shade immediately. This guard looked exactly how she had felt that day. Maybe even worse. Charlotte tugged on her nanny's sleeve, but the older woman was distracted by a phone call. The guard swayed again, more noticeably this time. Charlotte's heart began to race. She looked around to see if anyone else had noticed, but the few people in the courtyard were going about their business, paying no attention to the guard who was clearly struggling. In that moment, young Princess Charlotte made a decision that would surprise everyone around her and show wisdom far beyond her years. Charlotte knew she had to act quickly. The guard's condition was getting worse with each passing second. His face had gone from pale to an alarming grayish color, and his eyes seemed unfocused. Charlotte pulled harder on her nanny's sleeve, finally getting her attention. "Miss Sarah, that guard is sick," Charlotte said urgently, pointing toward the man. Her nanny glanced over briefly and smiled. "He's just doing his job, dear. The guards are trained to stand like that. Come along now." Charlotte did not move. She had been raised to be polite and obedient, but she had also been taught to be compassionate and to help those in need. Her mother, the Princess of Wales, had taken her to hospitals and charity events, where she learned that helping others was more important than following rules blindly. Charlotte looked at the guard again and saw his knees buckle once more. This time, he did not recover as quickly. He staggered, catching himself at the last moment, without another word. "Shh!" Charlotte broke away from her nanny and ran toward the guard. "Princess Charlotte, come back here at once!" Her nanny called out, but Charlotte did not stop. She ran across the courtyard, her blue dress flowing behind her. Several tourists noticed the commotion and began taking pictures, though they did not understand what was happening. Charlotte reached the guard and looked up at him. His eyes were glassy, and sweat poured down his face, soaking into his collar. "Sir, you need to sit down," Charlotte said in her clear, confident voice. The guard's eyes flickered down to her for just a moment, before returning to their fixed position straight ahead. He could not acknowledge her. The rules were strict. He could not move or speak while on duty, no matter who addressed him, not even a princess. Charlotte understood this. But she also understood that rules could not be more important than a person's life. She turned and saw her nanny approaching quickly. along with a castle staff member who had noticed the unusual scene. "Please help him," Charlotte said to them. "He's going to fall. I know he is. He's too hot, and he needs water and shade." The staff member, a middle-aged man named James, who had worked at the castle for 15 years, looked at the guard more carefully. He had seen this before. Guards sometimes pushed themselves too hard, especially the younger ones who wanted to prove themselves. James immediately radioed for assistance. Charlotte's nanny tried to gently pull the princess away. "Your Royal Highness, you've done well to notice, but we must let the professionals handle this now," she said softly. But Charlotte shook her head. "He's about to fall, Miss Sarah. Right now." As if on cue, the guard's rifle slipped from his grip, clattering on the stone ground. His body tilted forward, and he began to collapse. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion. The guard, a young man named Thomas Bellamy, who was only 23 years old, fell forward. James lunged to catch him, but was not quite close enough. Princess Charlotte, despite being just a small child, stepped forward and tried to break his fall. She could not hold his weight, of course, but her action caused Thomas to fall slightly to the side rather than straight forward, preventing him from hitting his head on the stone pavement. James reached them a second later and carefully lowered Thomas to the ground. "Get medical help now," James shouted to another staff member. Within moments, the castle's medical team arrived with a stretcher and emergency equipment. They quickly assessed Thomas's condition. He was suffering from severe heat exhaustion and dehydration. His body temperature was dangerously high. One of the medical team members, a woman named Dr. Patricia Hughes, began cooling Thomas down with wet towels while another administered fluids. Charlotte stood back now, watching with worried eyes as they worked on the young guard. "Is he going to be all right?" Charlotte asked Dr. Hughes. The doctor looked up at the princess and smiled reassuringly. "He will be, Your Royal Highness, thanks to you. You noticed the signs early? If he had been standing out here much longer, this could have been much more serious." Charlotte felt relief wash over her, but she was still concerned. Why didn't anyone else see that he was sick? She asked innocently. It was a question that made the adults around her pause and think. Dr. Hughes carefully chose her words. "Sometimes, Princess Charlotte, people get so used to seeing things a certain way that they stop really looking. The guards stand so still and proper that we forget they're human beings who can get tired and sick, just like anyone else. You saw him as a person who needed help, and that made all the difference." Charlotte nodded, understanding. She watched as they lifted Thomas onto the stretcher and began carrying him toward the medical facility. "May I visit him later to see if he's feeling better?" Charlotte asked her nanny. Miss Sarah looked uncertain. "I'll have to ask your mother, dear." As they walked back toward the residence, word of what had happened spread quickly through the castle. By the time Charlotte reached her family's private quarters, her mother was waiting for her with an expression that was both concerned and proud. The Princess of Wales knelt down to Charlotte's level and took her hands. "I heard what you did today," she said softly. "Miss Sarah told me everything. You were very brave and very kind." Charlotte looked down at her shoes. "I just didn't want him to get hurt, Mummy. He looked so sick, and nobody else was helping him." Her mother pulled her into a hug. "That's exactly what you should have done. You put someone else's well-being before protocol, before what people might think, and before your own comfort. That's what real leadership looks like." That evening, Charlotte could not stop thinking about the guard. She wondered if he had recovered and if he was comfortable. During dinner with her family, she was quieter than usual. Her father, the Prince of Wales, noticed and asked her what was troubling her. Charlotte explained her worries about Thomas, and her father listened carefully. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "what you did today will probably be talked about for a very long time. Not just because you're a princess, but because you showed real character." Charlotte looked confused. "But I just tried to help someone who needed help. Isn't that what anyone would do?" Her father smiled at her innocence. "You would think so, Charlotte. But sometimes people see someone in uniform or someone in a position like a guard and they forget that person is human. They assume everything is fine because that's how it's supposed to be. You didn't make that assumption? You looked closer, you cared, and you acted. That's special." The next morning, Charlotte received permission to visit Thomas in the medical wing. She walked through the corridors with her mother, feeling nervous. She had never visited anyone in a hospital setting within the castle before. When they entered the room, Thomas was sitting up in bed, looking much better than he had the previous day. His color had returned to normal, and he was sipping water. When he saw Princess Charlotte, he immediately tried to stand, but the nurse gently pushed him back down. "Please, don't get up," Charlotte said quickly. "I just wanted to make sure you're feeling better." Thomas looked overwhelmed. "Your Royal Highness, I don't know how to thank you. Dr. Hughes told me what happened. You potentially saved my life yesterday." Charlotte blushed and shook her head. "I just noticed you didn't look well. Are you really feeling better now?" Thomas nodded. "Much better, thank you. I've been a guard for 2 years, and I thought I could handle anything. I didn't realize how the heat was affecting me until it was too late. I should have asked to be relieved, but I didn't want to seem weak." Charlotte tilted her head thoughtfully. "My mummy says that asking for help when you need it isn't weak. It's smart. And it's braver to admit you're struggling than to pretend everything is fine." Thomas smiled at the young princess's wisdom. "Your mother is absolutely right. I've learned that lesson now." They talked for a few more minutes, with Charlotte asking him questions about being a guard and Thomas answering as best he could. When it was time to leave, Charlotte's mother placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. Before they left, Thomas spoke again. "Princess Charlotte, what you did yesterday went against protocol in a way, but it was absolutely the right thing to do. I hope you never lose that instinct to help others, regardless of what rules might say."
Oh.
The story of Princess Charlotte's actions spread beyond the castle walls faster than anyone anticipated. News outlets picked up the story, and it became a talking point around the world. People were touched by the image of a young princess who had the awareness and compassion to help someone in need, even when it meant breaking from expected behavior. Social media was filled with positive comments praising Charlotte's actions and discussing the importance of seeing beyond someone's uniform or position to recognize their humanity. The Royal Guard issued a statement thanking Princess Charlotte and announcing that they would be reviewing their protocols for dealing with extreme weather conditions. They implemented new procedures that allowed guards to signal if they were feeling unwell without breaking their stance, and they ensured that supervisors would check on guards more frequently during hot weather. Thomas Bellamy became an unexpected advocate for these changes, sharing his experience to help improve safety for all guards. Several weeks after the incident, the castle organized a small private ceremony. Thomas, now fully recovered and back on modified duties, was there along with his commanding officers. Princess Charlotte attended with her parents and siblings. The head of the Royal Guard gave a short speech about duty, compassion, and the importance of looking after one another. He then presented Charlotte with a special commendation. It's a beautiful certificate that recognized her quick thinking and kind heart. Charlotte accepted it graciously, but seemed more interested in talking to Thomas and the other guards who were present. She asked them questions about their training, their experiences, and what they enjoyed most about their job. The guards, usually so formal and reserved, relaxed around the young princess. They could see that her concern for Thomas had been genuine, and that her interest in their well-being was real. One of the older guards, a man named Robert who had served for 20 years, spoke to Charlotte's mother privately. "Your Royal Highness, in all my years of service, I've seen many members of the royal family. They're all dutiful and respectful, but what your daughter did was different. She didn't just notice a problem and report it to someone else. She put herself in the situation. She ran to help without thinking about appearances or protocol. That kind of instinctive compassion cannot be taught. It's simply who she is." The Princess of Wales felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you for saying that. My hope for all my children is that they understand their privilege comes with responsibility. It's not just to fulfill royal duties, but to be good human beings who genuinely care about others." Robert nodded. "Princess Charlotte already understands that, ma'am. What happened with Thomas proved it." Months passed, and life at the castle returned to normal, but the impact of that summer day lingered. Charlotte had learned an important lesson about trusting her instincts and acting on them. Even when others might not understand immediately, she had also learned that small actions could create big changes. The new protocols for the guards had made their working conditions safer, and several potential incidents had been prevented because guards now felt more comfortable signaling when they needed help. Thomas Bellamy and Princess Charlotte developed an unlikely friendship. Whenever Charlotte saw Thomas on duty, she would give him a small wave, and he would give her the tiniest nod, the most acknowledgement a guard could offer while maintaining his post. Thomas later said in an interview, carefully approved by the palace, that the incident had changed his perspective on service. He realized that true strength was not about suffering in silence, but about knowing when to ask for support. Charlotte's parents used the incident as a teaching moment for all their children. They talked about the importance of awareness, compassion, and courage. They emphasized that being royal did not mean being separate from others or above them, but rather being connected to them and responsible for their well-being. Charlotte's younger brother Louis asked if he could meet Thomas too, and a tea was arranged where the guard shared stories about his training and experiences. The media continued to follow Charlotte's development with interest, often referring back to this incident as evidence of her character. But within the castle walls, away from cameras and public attention, Charlotte remained simply a thoughtful, observant child who loved her family, enjoyed learning, tried to be kind to everyone she met. She did not think of herself as heroic or special for what she had done. In her mind, she had simply helped someone who needed help. Years later, when Charlotte was older, she would reflect on that summer day as a defining moment in her life. It taught her that positions and protocols should never prevent us from seeing and responding to human need. It showed her that leadership was not about following rules blindly, but about knowing when compassion must take precedence. And it demonstrated that age and size did not determine the impact someone could have. Thomas Bellamy eventually became an instructor for new guards. He always told them the story of the princess who noticed when no one else did. He used it to teach them about looking out for one another and never being too proud to admit when they needed help. The story became part of the guards' culture, a reminder that everyone, no matter their rank or role, deserved care and attention. As for Princess Charlotte, she grew up carrying the lessons of that day with her. She understood that real nobility had nothing to do with titles or crowns and everything to do with how you treated others, especially in moments when no one was watching or when it would be easier to look away. The young princess who ran across a courtyard to help a struggling guard had shown the world what true leadership looked like, and it was a lesson that would stay with everyone who heard her story for years to come.